The basic functions of management are to plan, organize, staff, direct, and control. Planning is the first function of management. The plan should include objectives, policies, and procedures. Note the difference between policies and procedures. Policies are general decision-making guidelines. Procedures detail the steps in an operation or an activity. Short-range or operational planning covers a period of 1 year or less and is usually the operating budget. Long-range planning covers a 5-year cycle, focusing on goals and objectives. Strategic planning is a continuous and systematic process where people make decisions about intended future outcomes, how they are to be accomplished, and how success is measured and evaluated. In this planning process, the SWOT method is useful. This looks at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the operation. Managers must be able to respond quickly to emergencies and manage resources so adequate supplies are on hand. A disaster assessment checklist includes how to take care of your personnel, the building, the food, and the equipment. Note to test your emergency plans. The tabletop drill simulates an emergency situation. Organizing is the second management function. It identifies tasks and activities and divides tasks into positions. The organizational chart shows the employee how they fit into the operation. Lines of authority are shown with solid lines, advisory or staff positions with dotted lines. In the line organization, each individual is responsible to the one ranking above him on the chart. This clearly shows placement of responsibility. The chain of command shows the command relationship from the top down throughout the organization. Staff positions are added to advise and support the line, but are not involved in day-to-day operations. Functional positions serve as both line and staff. They have limited authority over an activity because of specialized knowledge. The span of control is the number of individuals or departments under the direction of one person. Note, a narrow span of control is needed for newly hired workers who require more supervision. A wide span is used with highly trained, well-motivated workers who don't require close supervision. When determining staffing needs, consider the type of operation and the number of meals produced per labor hour. In conventional food service in acute care facilities, we can produce 3.5 meals per labor hour. In school food service, we can produce up to 15 meals per labor hour. This method is cafeteria style with limited choices, so productivity is higher. When determining the total number of meals served, consider meal equivalents, which covers nourishments or in-between meal feedings. If it takes as much labor to prepare 6 nourishments as it does 1 meal, then 6 nourishments are equivalent in labor to 1 meal. Work schedules are usually set with a 30-minute lunch break and 1 or 2 15-minute work breaks. The manager needs to develop several schedules that run the operation. Note the differences. The master schedule serves as the overall plan. Use this to write weekly schedules. The shift schedule shows staffing patterns for a particular operation, like dishwashing or the tray line. The production schedule shows the time and sequencing of events required to produce a meal. Note it describes what to do when. Staffing needs are often stated in full-time equivalents. Note the difference between absolute and adjusted FTEs. Absolute FTEs refer to the minimum number of employees needed to staff the facility. This counts, keyword, productive hours only, hours actually worked. Adjusted FTEs are adjusted to add in benefit days and days off. To compute the number of FTEs, divide daily hours worked by 8, weekly hours by 40, or note annual hours worked by 2080. Relief workers cover the days off of full-time employees. Approximately 1.55 employees are needed for everyday coverage of full-time positions. Full-time employees generally are available an average of only 236 days per year because of days off and benefit days. Note, to determine the actual number of employees needed, multiply the number of full-time positions by 0.55 to get the number of relief workers needed to cover a full year. If you have 20 full-time positions, you will need 11 relief workers. In hospital food service, we must cover a 7-day week. Employees work 5 days and have 2 days off. A relief worker covers those 2 days off and can also work a 5-day week. Note, a relief worker can cover the days off of 2.5 full-time workers each week. Productivity ratios measure how efficiently we operate. The ratios compare input, labor, money, materials, to output, the service provided, like a meal, a consult. Examples of productivity ratios include trays prepared per minute, meals produced per hour, consults conducted per hour. To increase productivity, increase the output or decrease the input. Note, meals per labor hour are determined by dividing the number of meals produced by the number of hours worked. Work simplification studies are conducted to find and eliminate the unnecessary parts of a job. Note, they look at the smallest parts of the job, like hand movements or the number of steps taken between pieces of equipment. They are conducted to increase productivity and decrease costs. Please recognize the studies listed as examples of work simplification procedures. Occurrence sampling is the intermittent observation of random samples of work to determine the percentage of time spent working or idle. Cross charts evaluate the efficiency of equipment placement and show the number of movements between pieces of equipment. In directing, the manager leads the organization so that objectives are achieved. Coordination links activities of various departments within the organization. Delegation of responsibility is essential to distribute the workload to qualified individuals at various levels. To delegate successfully, the manager must have a clear understanding of what needs to be done, give good instructions, establish controls, and provide training and motivation. Reluctance to delegate is common. Managers may feel they can do it better themselves, or they may be too disorganized to decide what needs to be delegated. However, for the operation to succeed, duties should be delegated to the lowest competent level. Communication is the process of transmitting and receiving information to bring about a desired action. The response or feedback tells you whether or not the correct message has been received. Oral communication provides immediate feedback. There are many barriers to effective communication that should be realized and removed. Words are not mutually understood or may have different meanings for different people. Physical barriers include illegible handwriting and poor voice quality. However, the most critical part of communication is having good listening skills. Communication channels within an organization refer to directions on the organizational chart. Note, the downward channel, from the head of the department down through the ranks, works easily with the use of memos, meetings, and procedure manuals. Upward communication, from the workers back up to the manager, is more challenging. This will work well if you operate with an open-door policy, making sure the team knows they can come to you with their issues. This is an important channel. It provides the team an opportunity to have a say in what is happening on the job. And the leader needs this information from them, for they know more about what is happening than you do. Horizontal communication occurs between departments, as between the Director of Nursing and the Director of Nutrition Services. Diagonal communication occurs between functions diagonally placed. The ordering clerk in food service may send a request directly to a purchasing department rather than going through a number of food service channels. And the informal channel is the grapevine. This refers to the chatter that occurs among workers who spend the day together. Members of all organizations must be persuaded to contribute their best efforts, as work is often routine. The task of motivation is to supply a personal incentive for each worker. The most widely quoted theory of motivation is that presented by Maslow. He suggests that a hierarchy of needs determines our behavior. Please note these needs in order. Most basic are the physiological needs, followed by the needs for security and safety. When these basic needs are met, then the higher needs of social, self-esteem, and self-actualization become motivational factors. Note, helping employees be their best through advanced training enriches the job and is a true motivator. Herzberg's research on motivation came up with similar ideas. He divided factors into satisfiers and dissatisfiers, which are similar to Maslow's basic needs. They include pay, job security, and working conditions. These factors do not produce motivation, but can prevent motivation from occurring. True motivators which enrich the job are greater responsibility, personal accomplishment, recognition, and participation in decision-making. McClelland's theory suggests that all people have three needs. The achievement motive is a desire to do something better or more efficiently. The need for affiliation is the desire to be liked by others. Those with a need for power enjoy competition and seek confrontation. McGregor believed that a leader's attitude toward human nature has a large influence on how that person behaves as a leader. This attitude of the manager towards the employee has an impact on their job performance. If the manager's expectations are high, productivity is likely to be high. Note the difference. Theory X managers believe that people inherently dislike work and will avoid it if at all possible, so they must be controlled and directed by pressure. This is negative and autocratic leadership. Theory Y managers believe that work is as natural as play or rest. They arrange working conditions so workers can achieve goals by directing their own efforts. This is positive, participative leadership. The Hawthorne studies, developed by Elton Mayo, showed that if you involve workers in a process, they will become more productive. Note, this is called the placebo effect. Special attention improves behavior. The expectancy theory of motivation states that rewards serve as motivators only under certain conditions. Employees must believe that effective performance will lead to a reward, but must also feel that the reward offered is attractive to them. Each manager has a style of leadership that reflects their own personality. Note the differences. The autocratic leader makes most decisions and exerts a high degree of control. In the consultative style, managers seek input from others but still make major decisions alone. The bureaucratic leader administers by the book, following policies and procedures to the letter. The participative leader represents the emerging trend in management. This leader encourages workers to participate in making decisions that affect them. This leader may utilize quality circles, small groups of workers who meet regularly to identify and solve problems. Results are improved productivity, quality, and morale. The democratic leader guides and encourages the group to make decisions. The laissez-faire or free-rein leader allows the group to make decisions and workers operate with minimal direction and control. Note, as a leader, you will need to be autocratic in times of crisis when decisions need to be made quickly. But for the rest of the day, try to be a participative leader. Share power with your team. The leadership grid is a device for analyzing your managerial style. It plots your concern for people, your employees, versus your concern for production, the work they are doing. According to the way you answer a number of questions, a score appears in one of the four corners of the grid. Please note what each corner represents. The bottom right-hand corner represents the autocratic obedience style. The manager focuses on production, the work to be accomplished. The upper left-hand corner represents country club management and focuses on concern for your employees. Is the work environment comfortable? The bottom left-hand corner represents impoverished management, where minimum effort is employed to get the required work accomplished. These managers tend to be indifferent, with a low concern for both the employees and the work they are doing. The upper right-hand corner represents team management. This combines a high concern for both workers and the work to be done. This is the most desirable form of management. Likert classified leadership as either job-centered or employee-centered. His research found that participative leadership encouraged the most productive groups. Here, decisions were made by group consensus, with the leader giving direction. The Peter Principle states that in a hierarchy, managers are promoted until they reach a job level at which they can no longer perform competently. This is a negative concept. Try not to follow the Peter Principle. Contingency or situational approaches recognize that methods that work well in one situation may not work well in another. The manager must identify what will work when. Examples include the leadership continuum, Fiedler's contingency approach, and the leadership effectiveness model. To summarize these theories, note how you lead depends on who you are leading and their ability to follow. What is the situation? The reciprocal approaches focus on how leaders and followers influence each other. The transactional leader clarifies roles and responsibilities, uses rewards and punishments to achieve goals. They are at the top of the control list and are autocratic. Transformational leaders are true agents of change and are participative. They inspire followers to become motivated to work towards goals. This is cultivation of employee acceptance of the group mission. It builds on and extends transactional leadership. The traditional or classical approach to management focuses on a formal structure that organizes and administers the work activities. It focuses on the task to be done. The scalar principle states that authority and responsibility flow in a direct line from the highest to the lowest level of the organization. Duties should be delegated to the lowest competent level. Unity of command specifies that each person should be accountable to only one superior. This theory has been criticized as being too mechanistic and impersonal. The human relations theory tried to compensate for those deficiencies. It focuses on employee participation in planning and decision-making, which improves morale and productivity. In Theory Z, the value of the company is the people that work there. There is mutual worker-employer loyalty. Theory Z managers practice consensus decision-making. Everyone who will be affected by a decision is involved in making that decision. Next is the systems approach to management. A system is an organized whole composed of interdependent parts. Note, the organization should be viewed as an open system that interacts regularly with external forces like customers and vendors. These external forces impact the organization, and the organization has an impact on its environment. It is this interaction that makes it necessary to view the organization as an open system. The second part of the theory is the impact of changes within an organization. Changes in one part may affect several other parts. This interdependence complicates the manager's job because a wide range of possible results of actions must be considered. This operational analysis gives the manager information to use in decision-making that involves conflicting objectives of different people within an organization. Scientific management is a work-centered approach. It structured the work to the point where motivation by the supervisor was minimized. A best way of performing each task was determined. Employees were then trained to work at the fastest pace possible at maximum efficiency levels. Note, this theory focuses on the physical aspects of the job, not the human aspects. Management by objectives is a type of democratic management that provides control from within the organization. The principal feature is the establishment of objectives with the employees. This is participative leadership. The final function of management is to control and evaluate the operation. Here, the manager measures present performance against standards. This should be an ongoing process. Note, the first step is to set the standards against which you will measure performance. Then measure the activity, compare it to the standards, and take action as needed. There are 3 types of skills needed by all managers. Note the differences. Technical skill implies an understanding of and proficiency in a particular activity, like a technique, a process, a procedure, or a method. Having this skill is most important at the lower levels of management. So a kitchen supervisor needs to have great technical skills. They need to know where everything is, how it all works, and how to fix it when it breaks. Human skill is the ability to work effectively with people. This skill is important at all levels of management, but is imperative at lower management levels. That kitchen supervisor may interact with dozens of people throughout the day, needing both technical and human skills. Conceptual skill involves the ability to see the organization as a whole and is most important at upper levels of management. The level of each of these skills needed depends on the level of management within the organization. If a supervisor is promoted to department head, they would need fewer technical and human skills and more conceptual skills. Hard skills like techniques, procedures, and documentation can be taught. Soft skills like communication skills are developed and nurtured over time. Managers have an informational role within the organization. They serve as monitor, disseminator, and spokesman. The interpersonal role is as a leader, as a liaison inside and outside of the department. Much of the manager's time is spent in making decisions and solving problems. Note, the first step in problem solving is to recognize and analyze the problem. Then determine possible solutions, select one, and give it a try. One problem-solving technique is a modification of brainstorming known as the nominal group technique developed by Del Beck. Unlike traditional brainstorming, which is often a chaotic procedure, this process has a leader and procedures to follow. Participants silently generate their ideas on the topic. Then, in a round-robin fashion, each reports their ideas to the leader who records them. Each item is then discussed and ranked. A vote is taken on the final decision. This process yields more ideas than traditional brainstorming. Note, this is prioritized decision-making. The Delphi technique probes expert minds in a series of written interviews from which consensus is sought. Note, the difference here is that participants do not meet. The cause and effect or fish diagram focuses on the different causes of a problem. It includes a series of arrows, each representing an important factor in the problem. It makes people aware of what influences the outcome. What are the causes of the effects you are seeking? Pareto charts illustrate the relative importance of problems. They are bar charts, where the strategy is to work on the tallest bar or problem that occurs most frequently. The queuing theory develops relationships involved in waiting in a line. It may be used to analyze the flow of customers in the cafeteria. Conflict is not only inevitable, but sometimes even necessary for the organization to survive. It often leads to a search for solutions. The task of a manager is not to suppress or resolve all conflict, but to manage it as it arises. In the organizational change theory model, the leader recognizes the need to make a change, then inspires followers to move towards the change. Change agents serve as catalysts for change. Successful change requires that you unfreeze the status quo, change to a new state, then refreeze to make the change permanent. For an organization to function efficiently, a formal authority system must be supplemented by informal bases of power and influence. Influence is an action that will cause a change in the behavior or attitude of another person. Note the sources of power. Power is the ability to exert influence. Reward power is based on having the ability to reward another for carrying out an order. Coercive power is the negative side of reward power and is the ability to punish someone for not meeting requirements. Legitimate or position power exists when a subordinate acknowledges that the influencer has the right to exert influence. The power comes from the position held. When a manager asks an employee to perform a task, he is using position power. Expert power is based on the belief that the influencer has some relevant expertise that the subordinate does not have. Referent power is based on the influencee's desire to identify with or imitate the influencer. Expert and legitimate powers are important for compliance. Expert and referent powers relate to subordinates' performance and satisfaction. Accountability refers to being responsible to oneself, an organization, or the public. Responsibility is an obligation to perform an assigned activity or see that someone else performs it. A successful organization has a manager with a bias for action and is close to the people it serves. The best managers are willing to take risks and try new things. The best managers view employees as the root source of quality and productivity gains. Employees are treated with respect and dignity. Management should be hands-on and value-driven. Explain the values that underlie the rules so employees will know why you are asking them to proceed in a certain way. A multicultural workforce should value, encourage, and affirm differences and diverse cultural modes. Address incidences of prejudice and provide diversity training to increase awareness and acceptance of differences among employees. Emotional intelligence is the extent to which a person is in tune with their own feelings and the feelings of others. It involves skills of self-awareness, communication, empathy, and self-regulation of emotions into appropriate behavior. Please note the key points of the following laws that regulate employment. Unemployment compensation is a system of insurance that protects wage earners and their families against loss of income because of unemployment. To be eligible, you must be employed for a specific time, be able and willing to work, and unemployed through no fault of your own. Employers pay for this with a tax based on their payroll. This is a state-run program. Workmen's compensation is also administered by the state. This covers the employer's liability for the costs of any accident incurred by an employee on the job. The law states that the employer must furnish a safe place to work, good instructions, and competent supervision. The National Labor Relations Act, the Wagner Act, is pro-labor and guarantees workers the right to organize and join labor unions. It created the National Labor Relations Board, to which you would bring any charge of unfair labor practice. The Taft-Hartley Act is pro-management. This amended much of the Wagner Act. It specified unfair labor practices on the part of the union. The Landrum-Griffin Act contains a Bill of Rights for union members. The Civil Rights Act prevents discrimination and protects against sexual harassment. It is overseen by the EEOC. The Equal Employment Opportunity Act is also administered by the EEOC and prevents discrimination in employment. The Fair Labor Standards Act includes the federal wage and hour law, which sets the minimum wage. This act regulates overtime work. An amendment is the Equal Pay Act. This act also covers donated time, which is compensable. If an employee is donating time to the employer, they must be paid for it. This donated time is also called tolerated time. The Fair Labor Standards Act includes child labor laws that regulate the hours and duties of younger workers. Occupations exempt from minimum wage and overtime requirements include executive, administrative, professional, and outside salespersons. The Age Discrimination Act protects the older worker. The Family and Medical Leave Act provides 12 weeks of unpaid job-protected leave. When you return, you are guaranteed an equal job, but not guaranteed the exact same job. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires that we provide reasonable accommodations. Please note aisles must be 36 and doors 32 inches wide. To comply with this act, job descriptions must specify essential job functions. HIPAA allows employees to transfer coverage of existing illness to another employer's insurance plan. The Social Security Act protects employees against loss of wages from retirement, unemployment, or disability. The NPI is a 10-digit identification number for providers and practitioners of healthcare services. It is used in standard transactions, such as in healthcare claims and medical records. The NCQA is a process used to assess and verify the qualifications of a healthcare provider. Many insurance companies require RDNs to become credentialed in order to provide services for their members and in order to pay claims. The CAQH ProView is an online credentialing portal that a provider can elect to share with multiple health plans or payer organizations. It eliminates the need for multiple insurance credentialing submissions. A state agency issues a license to individuals who meet specified qualifications to practice a particular profession. Licensing statutes for dietetics and nutrition always include a title protection provision, which is designed to prevent unlicensed individuals from holding themselves out to the public as dietitians or nutritionists. An important clause in employment contracts deals with union membership. The term checkoff is the deduction of union dues from the pay of union members. In a union shop, all workers must join the union after being hired. In an open shop, you can join the union or not. In a closed shop, you must be a union member first before being hired. Both the closed shop and the union shop are illegal in the public sector, government jobs. In an agency shop, workers are not required to be union members, but must pay an agency fee to the union. A number of states have passed right-to-work laws, which make it illegal to fire an employee who refuses to join the union, even though the contract has a union shop clause. Employment laws protect against unfair union and unfair employer practices. Note the union steward is one of your paid employees who represents union members in their relations with managers. They do not receive extra pay for this service. The union is a means of providing collective bargaining, where one person represents a group of people to bargain with the employer. Please note the steps in order. Bargaining begins between the union steward and management. If that fails, mediation is next. Here, a neutral person tries to help settle their differences. The mediator's decision is not binding. If that fails, arbitration is the final step in bargaining. This is a formal hearing to dissolve a dispute during an impasse in bargaining. The arbitrator's decision is usually binding. Note, unions can negotiate working conditions, vacations, and holidays, but not personnel requirements or strategic initiatives. The job analysis studies all aspects of the job and may be conducted first to collect information for the job description. The job description is a list of duties that reflects the required skills and responsibilities of a specific position. The job specification includes qualifications required of the worker. The specification is written for each job, not each position. It is used primarily in selecting and placing employees, so the personnel department would use the job specification when looking for employees to hire. The job spec does not have detailed information as to what to do, nor the time involved. During recruiting and interviewing, the Fair Employment Practice Law makes it illegal to ask questions that discriminate because of age, race, religion, sex, and national origin. 2 questions of a personal nature that you may ask during an interview are, have you worked here under a different name? And have you reached legal working age? A personal interview helps determine the fitness of the applicant for the job. With a structured interview, you ask questions based on a pre-planned strategy. This provides the same information on all applicants. The unstructured interview does not follow such a defined pattern and allows the applicant to direct the conversation by answering questions like, "Tell me about your last job." This requires more participation on the part of the applicant, and you are likely to get more information from him using this method. It may be useful in assessing interpersonal and communication skills. This method is used with higher levels of personnel. Items used in orientation and training include the work schedule. This is an hour-by-hour listing of tasks and time needed to complete the task. The job breakdown describes what to do and how to do it without time limits. Job enlargement adds similar tasks to alleviate boredom associated with routine jobs. And job enrichment upgrades the job by adding motivational factors. Promotion moves a worker to a job involving higher pay, higher status, and greater performance needs. A transfer moves a worker to another job at approximately the same level within the organization. Separation is termination. Salaries are the earnings of managerial and professional employees. Note, wages are the hourly earnings of employees covered by the Fair Labor Standards Act. Benefits are categorized as statutory, compensatory, and supplementary. Note, statutory benefits are required by law. An example is workmen's compensation. Information in personnel records must be kept confidential. In a non-union operation, grievances can be settled by the supervisor and the employee on an informal basis. If you are unionized, the contract includes a formal procedure that must be followed. Disciplinary action refers to the steps taken to correct undesirable behavior. The aim of management is to change behavior and attitudes rather than just to invoke a punishment. The disciplinary process begins with warnings, followed by suspension and dismissal. Presented are some positive disciplinary procedures to follow. Keep in mind the main purpose is to improve employee behavior. Consistency is the key element. This allows an employee to feel that any other employee would receive the same discipline for committing the same offense. Make sure the employee knows what they should be doing and what the standards are. Speak with them in private. Compare their performance with your standards, not to that of another worker. Discipline should be immediate, consistent, and impersonal. The best use of an employee evaluation is to improve their performance by providing feedback. Note the obstacles that stand in the way of an effective appraisal. Include the halo effect, where they are judged mainly on positive traits. Leniency of error is where we rate everyone higher than they deserve. And the error of central tendency is to rate everyone as average. Organizational culture is the shared philosophy, beliefs, expectations, and attitudes that hold an organization together. To develop a good relationship between management and staff, have a written mission statement. Have integrity and build trust. Train your workers well and reward good performance. Find ways for them to have fun inside and outside of work. Note the labor turnover rate divides the number of employees terminated by the total number of positions in the department. High labor turnover rates result in higher labor costs, so the goal is low turnover. Cultural humility involves the ability to maintain an interpersonal stance that is other-oriented in relation to aspects of cultural identity that are most important to the client or employee. Cultural competence is the ability of systems to provide care to patients with diverse values, beliefs, and behaviors, including the tailoring of health care delivery to meet their social, cultural, and linguistic needs. Inclusion is the intentional, ongoing effort to ensure that diverse people with different identities can fully participate in all aspects of the work of an organization, including leadership positions and decision-making processes. Create a more level playing field on which to compete and equal access to opportunities and information. Cultural sensitivity is being aware of similarities and differences among various cultures as you engage in active communication with other communities. Encourage diversity and inclusion. Financial management begins with the budget, which is an estimate of future needs. Note it gives the manager control over the operation. Budgets are usually reviewed monthly. The operating budget is a forecast, a prediction, of revenues, expenses, and profit for a specific period of time. Note, the first step is to forecast your sales or income. Then budget the expenditures based on that projected level of revenue. The cash budget projects revenue and expenses. It shows the inflow and outflow of cash. The purpose is to determine if funds will be available when they are needed. Note the capital budget includes equipment, the facility, and costs of improvements and repairs. It includes expenditures whose returns should last more than 1 year. Note the pro forma statement projects expected income, expenditures, and profit. Organizations use various methods to establish line item amounts within budgets. Note the differences. The traditional or incremental budget uses the existing budget as a base and projects changes for the next year by adding an inflation factor. The zero-based budget is not based on what you're doing now, but begins at zero. You must then justify each anticipated expense. This budget is more planning-oriented. The fixed budget is prepared at one level of sales or revenue. There is no expected major change in patient or customer count during the year. The flexible budget is adjusted to various levels of operation with varying levels of sales or revenue throughout the year. If one of the patient's wings will be closed for a portion of the year, then the budget needs to reflect anticipated changes in revenue and expense. The performance budget details what it costs to perform an activity, like how much just to supervise the tray line. Components of a budget include fixed or indirect costs. These costs are not affected by sales volume and are not directly involved in day-to-day activities. They include property taxes, rent, insurance. Flexible, variable, or direct costs vary directly with sales, like food costs. Labor is a semi-variable cost. It has both fixed and variable components. A certain number of employees are required for basic service, with others added as the need increases. Efficient allocation of resources can lead to cost savings. 3 major factors affect cost control: food, labor, and operating expenses. Food cost is the most readily controllable item in the budget and the one subject to the greatest changes over time. Several factors affect food cost. The most important is how you plan the menu. The type of service is also a factor. A selective menu reduces plate waste and food cost. Group buying reduces food cost. Good control must also be exerted over receiving, storage, and production efforts. Please note the difference between edible portion and as-purchase prices as explained in the example. Divide the raw purchase cost by the cooked edible weight to determine the edible portion cost per pound. Standardized portions or portion control helps in controlling costs and in maintaining customer satisfaction. Labor costs are less controllable than food costs. A small portion of the budget covers operating costs, including utilities and cleaning supplies, so electricity is an operating cost. There are 2 accounting methods used to record transactions. The cash basis of accounting recognizes a transaction at the time the cash is taken in or released. The accrual basis, note, recognizes revenues when earned and expenses when incurred, regardless of when the cash is actually received or dispersed. The general ledger is a summary of all expenses and revenues for the month by category. The income statement shows the operating results over a period of time. It is also known as the profit and loss or revenue and expense statement. The balance sheet is an explanation of the organization's financial condition on a particular date, so is static. It lists assets and liabilities. Note, assets are goods and products owned, like cash, inventory, and accounts receivable, which is money owed to you. Liabilities are the amounts you owe to others. On the balance sheet, the assets must equal the liabilities plus the equity or capital in the business. Know the differences between the income statement and the balance sheet. They both analyze operational effectiveness. The balance sheet is a quick way to view the financial condition of a business. Financial ratios use formulas to indicate an organization's financial position. Liquidity ratios assess the ability to meet short-term debt. Net worth ratios measure the ability to meet long-term debt. Turnover ratios assess how well you are managing your assets. An example is the inventory turnover rate, which divides the costs of sales by the average inventory cost. This shows the manager's ability to control the investment in the inventory. Note the formula. It measures how often an inventory is consumed and replenished during an accounting period. High ratios indicate a limited inventory is being kept. Low ratios indicate large amounts of money are tied up in the stock. A concern for stock not moving is spoilage. The Daily Food Cost Report, the food cost percentage, tells you the percent of the income spent on the food sold. Note the formula, which divides the daily food cost by the daily income. Every food service organization has its own standard or level of percent of income to be spent on food. The food cost per meal is determined by dividing the food cost for the month by the number of meals served that month. The food cost includes foods removed from the inventory and actual food purchases. Please review the example. The profit margin is used to assess overall financial efficiency. It reflects the portion of sales volume remaining after paying all expenses. Divide the net profit by the sales or revenue figure. Please review the examples and note the definitions of cost of sales, gross profit, and net profit. The cost of sales is the cost of the raw food and beverage sold. The gross profit is the profit shown after deducting only the cost of food. The net profit is the profit after all expenses are deducted from sales. The payback period determines the length of time it will take to pay back the money invested in a new service. Add up the costs of the service, add up the costs saved by using the new service, then divide the costs by dollars saved. Please review the steps in projecting a budget. Marketing is the process of identifying a need, helping potential clients in recognizing that need, and filling the need. The marketing channel refers to all of the steps in the process from producer to consumer. Note, the first step in marketing is to identify a need that is not being filled. Assess the need. Market segmentation is the process of dividing a total market into groups of people with similar product needs. Note the differences among the segments. The target market is a group of people or places with similar wants, needs, and desires with the potential for purchasing your product. The product mix is the group of items you will offer to them. Note the marketing mix includes the 4 P's of marketing: the product, the place, the price, and how you will promote it. Note, signature brands refer to something unique you have developed. Promotional tools include an announcement of your service, like a press release. Social marketing advances a cause and tries to change personal or social behavior. Business marketing fills a need or a desire. Financial responsibilities of the manager include determining the break-even point of the operation. This is the point at which sales revenue will exactly cover all costs. You don't make money, you don't lose money, you simply break even. One method to determine break even is to determine the number of units you need to sell to break even. Please review the example and note the formula. Another method is to determine break even in sales volume, how many dollars you need to bring in to break even. Break even can also be expressed on a graph. Note, the break even point is where the sales line crosses the total cost line. If revenue comes in less than that break even point, you lose money. If revenue exceeds the break even point, you have made a profit. Please add a note, when costs increase, the break-even point increases. There are several methods used to set selling prices. Note the formula for the traditional selling price, also known as the factor method or markup method. This is based on the raw food cost of the item plus a markup suitable for the operation. The markup is the difference between the cost and the selling price. It is determined by dividing the desired food cost percentage into 100. Then multiply the markup times the raw food cost. A hidden cost of 10% may be added to the food cost to cover unproductive costs. Note the prime cost method includes the raw food cost plus the cost of labor directly involved in preparing the item. Promotions pricing is done for a short time. The sale or special price is used to increase sales during a slow period. Note loss leaders are items priced lower to draw people in the hope that they will purchase other items at normal markups. Note the cost of profit pricing method includes the profit you wish to make on the item. This guarantees a certain profit with each sale. Every organization strives to have strong public relations within the community it serves. This includes establishing good relationships with local press who can share your good works with their readers. Use social networking to connect with large audiences. And introduce yourself to legislators and government officials and offer your services as a resource. Accreditation organizations certify, manage, and promote quality improvement. The DNVGL Healthcare Accreditation Program validates Medicare compliance. The Joint Commission accredits and certifies healthcare organizations. CMS includes Medicare and Medicaid services. Part A of Medicare covers hospital inpatient stays under prospective payment systems using predetermined rates for hospital discharges. Note Part B provides optional insurance for supplementary benefits. RDNs are listed as eligible medical professionals who may screen and counsel Medicare beneficiaries. Note, intensive behavioral therapy is a benefit for the obese under Medicare Part B. Coverage is granted only in a primary care setting, BMI must be greater than 30, and continued treatment is contingent on weight loss assessed at the 7th month of treatment. Medicaid is a federal law administered by states and provides payment for medical care for all eligible needy. CHIP is a partnership between federal and state governments. It expands health coverage to uninsured children whose families earn too much income to qualify for Medicaid, but too little to avoid private coverage. The PCMH focuses on the relationship between the patient and their personal physician. The physician takes responsibility for all aspects of the health care for the patient and coordinates and communicates with other providers as needed. The RDN should be considered part of this medical home treatment plan. The ACO is a healthcare organization that ties provider reimbursements to quality metrics and reductions in the cost of care. An alternative payment model is a payment approach that gives added incentive payments to provide high-quality and cost-efficient care. Coding and billing documentation includes ICD-10-CM codes, which describe an individual's disease or medical condition. CPT codes include 5 digits that describe the MNT services rendered by RDNs. The CMS 1500 form is used to submit non-institutional claims to Medicare and Medicaid for healthcare services. Cost-benefit studies determine whether the goal of the intervention is worthwhile in terms of its cost. The value of the benefits derived from the intervention must outweigh the costs of providing it. Cost-effectiveness analysis assumes that the goal of the project is worthwhile. The question to resolve is which method of intervention is the most effective in achieving that goal. Note, it compares costs of alternative strategies and utilizes outcomes research. What works best, for whom, and at what cost? An audit is a formal study that retrospectively monitors performance. Did performance meet the standard? Total quality management uses the PDCA or PDSA cycle. These are problem-solving techniques for coordinating process improvement. Continuous quality improvement is a part of TQM and is an ideal that says, note, our systems and performance can always improve. There is not an end point in quality efforts. Continuous quality improvement. Indicators are measurement tools that monitor and evaluate important aspects of patient care and management functions. They serve as flags to direct attention to specific issues. They describe an event, a complication, or an outcome. Rate-based indicators describe what will happen when the best care is provided, having thresholds between 1 and 99%. Sentinel event indicators are serious events that require investigation every time they occur. These are undesirable but avoidable events, having thresholds of either 0 or 100%. We never or we always want these to happen. Outcome management systems evaluate effectiveness and efficiency. Data is collected and analyzed in a timely manner, so our performance can be adjusted and improved as needed. The goal is to improve the quality of services offered. Six Sigma is a data-driven approach for improving quality by removing defects and their causes. It helps organizations focus on developing and delivering nearly perfect products and services. Note the Kaizen Good Change philosophy suggests making continuous, small, incremental improvements daily rather than large, revolutionary changes. And the Lean method uses less effort, less space, less capital, less time to make products exactly as the customer wants them with very few defects. Note the two standards developed by our Academy. They are not regulations but may be used to determine competency. Standards of practice in nutrition care describe in general terms a competent level of nutrition care practice as shown by the nutrition care process. This is for those working in direct patient care. Standards of professional performance describe a competent level of behavior in the professional role. These are for all credentialed professionals. Note the 4 principles of the AND's Code of Ethics. Be competent in your practice. Show integrity in your behavior. Take positive steps to benefit others. And support fair, equitable, and appropriate treatment and fair allocation of resources. This concludes Domain 3.